Imaging finding a rare coin so rare it could pay off your house today. We're diving into 10 of the most valuable US coins ever found. Real coins worth hundreds and even millions of dollars or more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next rare find. Let's start this.
Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, there is a small copper penny sitting quietly in a drawer, a jar, maybe even inside an old coffee can in the garage. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, it carries a market value that has reached as high as $548,000. That is not a typo. That is not a fantasy. That is the real, documented power of the 1954 D-Wheat penny error coin. And here's the uncomfortable question most people don't want to ask themselves: what if you already own one, and don't even know it? That single thought alone has changed lives, funded retirements, and rewritten family legacies. This story begins in 1954, during a time when America was rebuilding confidence, industry was booming, and the U.S. Mint in Denver was striking millions of wheat pennies at full speed. Pennies were everyday objects, handled casually, dropped on sidewalks, tossed into pockets without a second thought. But when production moves fast, perfection sometimes slips. And when perfection slips at the U.S. Mint, history is quietly created. The 1954 D-Wheat penny became one of those rare moments where a small error escaped into circulation, unnoticed at the time, only to emerge decades later as one of the most hunted coins in American numismatic history. Now let me pause you right here, because this is where most people lose focus. You might be thinking, it's just another penny. That thought alone has cost Americans millions of dollars over the years. Here's the truth that makes people uncomfortable: rare coins don't look rich. They don't sparkle. They don't glow. They hide in plain sight. And that is exactly why so many valuable wheat pennies were spent, ignored, or lost forever. Humor me for a second: how many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Now imagine if even one of them could have paid off your mortgage. That's not exciting, that's terrifying. The 1954 D-Wheat penny is not valuable because it is old. Millions were minted that year. It is valuable because of specific mint errors that should never have left the Denver Mint. Errors like double dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, and weak or distorted mint marks created coins that were never supposed to exist. Collectors don't chase perfection alone, they chase rarity born from mistakes. And when those mistakes survive circulation and appear in high grade, demand skyrockets. That's how a 1-cent coin enters the six-figure conversation. Here's where excitement begins to replace doubt. Over the years, serious collectors and high-end auction houses have confirmed extraordinary sale prices for elite examples of 1954 D-Wheat penny errors. Coins graded in exceptional condition, especially those with strong visual errors and original surfaces, have commanded jaw-dropping figures. And when a coin reaches the $500,000 level, it stops being a hobby item and starts being treated like an asset. Wealthy collectors don't ask if it's expensive, they ask if it's available. And most of the time, the answer is no. Let me interrupt your focus for just a second. Quick question: if someone offered you $548,000 for a penny today, would you laugh, or would your heart start racing? That reaction matters, because it tells you something important. It tells you that this isn't about coins anymore. This is about awareness. People who understand rare money see opportunity where others see pocket change. And awareness is often the only difference between those who struggle financially and those who quietly build wealth through assets most people ignore. Act 2 is where fear and urgency step in. Because here's what the market doesn't advertise. The supply of genuine 1954 D-Wheat penny errors is shrinking, not growing. Coins are lost, damaged, improperly cleaned, or misidentified every year. At the same time, demand keeps rising. New collectors enter the market. Older collectors with deep pockets compete aggressively for fewer and fewer top-grade examples. This creates pressure. And pressure creates price movement. The people who wait often discover they waited too long, either to sell, or to recognize what they had, and here's the part that should stop you cold. Many of the most valuable wheat pennies were found not in vaults, but in ordinary American homes. Estate collections. Inherited jars. Old piggy banks that hadn't been opened in decades. These coins were never hunted, they were stumbled upon by people who simply took the time to look. And that creates a powerful emotional shift. Because suddenly this story isn't about collectors in suits bidding at auctions. It's about everyday Americans realizing they've been sitting on hidden wealth. Now, let's reset attention with a little reality check. If pennies were truly worthless, why do billion-dollar auction houses exist just to sell coins? Why do wealthy investors diversify into rare numismatics during economic uncertainty? The answer is simple and comforting at the same time. Rare coins are tangible wealth. They are not tied to stock market crashes, digital glitches, or bank failures. They exist. They can be held. And when demand meets rarity, value follows, sometimes explosively. Act 3 is where inspiration takes control. Because knowledge changes outcomes. The moment you understand what to look for, everything shifts. That old penny jar is no longer clutter, it's potential. That inherited collection is no longer sentimental, it's strategic. The 1954 wheat penny stands as proof that wealth does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the past, waiting for someone present-day smart enough to listen, and here's the most empowering truth of all. You don't need to be a millionaire to own something worth millions. You need curiosity. You need patience. And you need the courage to take action before everyone else does. The people who benefit most from rare coin markets are not gamblers, they are observers who act decisively when opportunity appears. And opportunity often appears disguised as something ordinary. As the market continues to heat up, high-grade 1954 wheat penny errors are increasingly being locked away in private collections. When that happens, public availability dries up. Prices don't fall, they surge. And the people who recognized value early are the ones who smile quietly while others ask, "How did I miss that?" Don't let that be your story. Let your story be the one where awareness led to action, and action led to financial confidence. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, when you open that drawer, that box, that old jar of pennies, remember this moment. Remember that American history has a habit of hiding wealth in the most unexpected places. The 1954 wheat penny is not just a coin, it's a reminder that the past can still pay in the present. And for those who recognize it, it can fund a future defined not by struggle, but by freedom, confidence, and a truly wealthy lifestyle. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. A penny. The kind you've ignored, dropped in your car, or tossed into a jar without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that this single coin, quiet, brown, ordinary looking, could be worth more than $500,000. Enough to change your lifestyle, erase debt, fund retirement, or finally live the freedom you've worked your whole life for. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you look at every penny you own. This story begins in America, in 1942. The world was at war, metal was scarce, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure. Mistakes happened. And when the mint makes mistakes, history gets written in copper. Among the most talked about coins of that era is the 1942 Lincoln wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin struck in Philadelphia, quietly released into circulation, unnoticed for decades. Today, certain era examples of this coin have become legendary, commanding prices that make headlines, with elite specimens reaching figures as high as $564,000. Yes, a penny. Take a breath. You're not imagining it. Act 1 is all about ignorance and opportunity. For years, these pennies passed through ordinary hands. Grocery clerks. Factory workers. Soldiers' families. Nobody knew. And that's the unsettling part. Right now, as you're watching this, there are people who unknowingly own coins worth more than their house. Coins sitting in dresser drawers, coffee cans, old purses, or inherited collections. The fear isn't that these coins don't exist. The fear is that someone sells one for a few cents, or worse, spends it. Ask yourself honestly, how many pennies have you handled in your life without really looking at them? Now here's where excitement kicks in. The 1942 no-mint mark wheat penny becomes truly powerful when paired with specific minting errors. Off-metal strikes. Wrong planchets. Doubling. Unusual weight. Incorrect metal composition during wartime transitions. These errors are not flaws, they are fingerprints. Proof that the coin escaped the mint in a way it never should have. And collectors don't just want them. They compete for them. Quietly. Aggressively. With serious money. Because the supply is frozen in time, and demand only grows stronger as more collectors enter the market and more coins are permanently lost, let me pause you right here with a simple question. When was the last time you actually examined a penny instead of dismissing it? Funny how the smallest things demand our attention only when they become valuable, right? That's the pattern interrupt. Because the truth is, wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. And only the prepared hear it. Act 2 is about awakening. At some point, collectors and investors realized what they were seeing. A wartime penny, no mint mark, carrying rare error characteristics, authenticated and graded at the highest levels. Auction records began to climb. Private sales surged. And suddenly, this once forgotten coin became one of the most desirable Lincoln cents in the hobby. The market didn't create the value. The rarity did. The history did. The mistake did. And once that realization spreads, it never goes backward. Here's what most people don't understand. Coins like this are not just collectibles. They are portable wealth. They are assets that don't depend on the stock market, political cycles, or interest rates. While paper money loses purchasing power, rare coins with documented demand often move in the opposite direction. That's why serious collectors, many of them in your age group, actively seek these pennies. They understand that owning history is one thing, but owning rare history is another level entirely, and yes, there's urgency here. Not manufactured urgency, real urgency. Every year, more people search their collections. More coins are discovered. More are certified. And once the best examples are locked away in private hands, they don't come back easily. When demand spikes and supply stays fixed, prices don't ask for permission. They rise. The question isn't whether these coins are valuable. The question is whether you'll recognize one before someone else does. Act 3 is transformation. This is where your story intersects with history. Maybe you inherited old pennies from a parent or grandparent. Maybe you collected casually as a kid. Maybe you've got jars you've never bothered to sort. This is your moment to look again, with educated eyes. Because selling the right coin, at the right time, to the right buyer, can change more than your bank balance. It can change how you see opportunity itself. Picture this. A single certified penny, properly identified, entering a competitive market where serious buyers already understand its significance. No begging. No convincing. Just demand. That's power. That's leverage. And that's why people who once ignored pennies now treat them with respect. Even reverence.so. Before you dismiss this as another coin story, remember this: history rewards attention. Wealth favors those who look closer than everyone else. And sometimes, the difference between ordinary life and extraordinary outcomes is as small as 1 cent, if it happens to be the right one. We're talking about the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny error, one of the most coveted coins in American history, and why collectors, investors, and auction houses are aggressively hunting for it right now. Now let me ask you something, and be honest. When was the last time you really looked at your pennies? Not just glanced at them, but looked at them. Because most people spend their entire lives chasing money, while real money quietly waits to be discovered. And yes, it's ironic. The coin people ignored for decades is now commanding 6-figure prices. That's not luck. That's history colliding with scarcity. This story begins during World War II. America was in crisis, industry was stretched thin, and copper, essential for ammunition and military equipment, was suddenly too valuable to waste. The U.S. Mint made a dramatic decision. In 1943, pennies would be struck in steel instead of copper. It was a temporary wartime solution. But when 1944 arrived, copper was supposed to return. And officially, it did. But history doesn't always follow the rules written on paper. Behind the scenes, something extraordinary happened. A small number of leftover steel planchets, or copper planchets, depending on the era, were accidentally fed into the presses. And among them emerged a coin that was never meant to exist, the 1944 wheat penny with no mint mark, struck in error. No announcement. No warning. Just a mistake. And mistakes, when combined with time, can become priceless. Here's where the excitement begins to build. This coin wasn't noticed right away. It circulated. It passed through hands. It bought bread, newspapers, maybe a cup of coffee. People spent it without a second thought. That's the frightening part. One of the most valuable pennies in existence was once treated as pocket change. And that means something powerful. There is still a chance one exists outside of collections. Now pause for a second, quick pattern interrupt. Imagine buying a candy bar for a penny that would later be worth over $500,000. Painful, right? Don't worry, we've all made bad financial decisions. The difference is, most of us didn't accidentally spend a retirement fund. What makes the 1944 no mint mark wheat penny so desirable isn't just its age. It's the combination of wartime history, official mint error, extreme rarity, and collector obsession. Coins like this don't just appreciate, they command. Auction houses don't list them. They promote them. Investors don't ask if they're worth it. They ask if they can get one before someone else does, and the number, $563,000, that's not speculation. That's real market value driven by demand. Demand from people who understand that rare American coins are not hobbies anymore. They are assets. Hard assets. Assets that survive inflation, market crashes, and economic uncertainty. While paper money loses value, these coins gain power. Here's the fear most people don't want to confront. Every year, priceless coins are thrown away, spent, or forgotten. Entire fortunes disappear because someone assumed it's just a penny. That mindset is expensive. And right now, the market is sending a clear message: rare pennies are in demand like never before. Collectors are aging. Supply is shrinking. And wealthy buyers are stepping in aggressively. Now let's shift into Act 2, the turning point. Because this isn't just a history lesson. This is about you. The audience watching this video. If you're between 30 and 65, you grew up in households where pennies were saved, jars were filled, and nothing was thrown away. Those jars weren't clutter. They were time capsules. And inside time capsules, value grows. Ask yourself this, another quick reset. What if the most valuable thing you own isn't your house, your car, or your investments, but something you've never checked? Something so small you dismissed it your entire life? That question alone has made people very wealthy. The 1944 no mint mark wheat penny is especially dangerous to ignore because it looks almost identical to common pennies. That's what makes it powerful. It hides in plain sight. And while only a tiny number are confirmed, experts believe more are still undiscovered. That belief fuels urgency. Because once the last one is found, prices don't stabilize, they explode. Collectors don't chase these coins because they're emotional. They chase them because they understand leverage. A single verified penny can change a family's financial trajectory. College paid for. Debt erased. Lifestyle upgraded. Freedom unlocked. That's not exaggeration, that's documented reality, and here's the part most people don't realize. Selling a coin like this isn't difficult. It's not risky. The moment a verified 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny appears, buyers line up. Auction houses compete. Private collectors make offers. The market does the work for you. This is not a maybe someday asset. This is a right now asset. Now Act 3, the resolution. This is where everything comes together. The past. The present. And the opportunity. America's history created this coin. Time increased its value. And awareness determines who benefits. The people who win in this space aren't necessarily experts. They're curious. They're patient. And they're willing to look twice at what others ignore. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. So here's the truth, simple, powerful, and urgent. If you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies, you are holding potential. Not hope. Potential. And the market right now is rewarding action. Demand is high. Prices are strong. And rare errors like the 1944 no-mint mark wheat penny are treated like trophies, not currency. Imagine this for just a moment. You open an old drawer, a cigar box, or maybe a dusty coffee can that hasn't been touched in decades. Inside are ordinary-looking pennies. Brown. Small. Forgettable. Or so you think. But what if one of those pennies is not ordinary at all? What if one single coin, smaller than a paperclip, could quietly be worth $564,000? That's not fantasy. That's not hype. That's the documented reality of a 1948 United States wheat penny with no mint mark, a coin so deceptively simple that it has already changed lives. And here's the unsettling part, there are still people who own this coin and have no idea. If that makes your pulse jump even a little, stay with me, because what you're about to hear may permanently change how you look at every penny you've ever ignored. This story begins in post-war America. It's 1948. The country is rebuilding, factories are roaring back to life, and the U.S. Mint is producing millions of pennies for everyday use. Nothing special. Nothing flashy. Except that during this period, critical minting errors slipped through, unnoticed at the time, dismissed as worthless mistakes. Coins struck without mint marks. Coins with die errors. Coins that were supposed to be destroyed, but weren't. And decades later, these mistakes became some of the most hunted, most aggressively acquired coins in American numismatic history. Funny how the world works, isn't it? The things nobody wanted yesterday are the things everyone is desperate to own today. Now let's talk about the 1948 wheat penny with no mint mark, because this coin sits at the center of a feeding frenzy most people don't even know exists. This penny was struck in Philadelphia, where coins traditionally carried no mint mark. But certain error varieties from this year, especially those with die anomalies, doubling, or strike irregularities, have exploded in value. One verified example crossed the auction block at $564,000, and it didn't sell because it was old. It sold because it was rare, authenticated, and demanded by elite collectors who compete aggressively behind closed doors. These are not casual hobbyists. These are investors, institutions, and private buyers who understand that rare coins are portable wealth, immune to inflation narratives, and increasingly scarce. Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable, in a good way. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you actually look at? Exactly. Most people treat pennies like noise. That's how treasures hide in plain sight. That's how opportunity slips through generations. And that's why right now, fear and excitement sit side by side, because the fear is realizing you may have already given one away, and the excitement is realizing you still might have one waiting. Act 2 is where everything shifts. Because once people learn what they're holding, the market changes fast. Demand for top-tier wheat penny errors is no longer slow or polite. It is aggressive. Prices are rising not because of hype, but because supply is collapsing. Coins get locked into private collections, estates, trusts, Vaults. Once they disappear, they don't come back. And here's the urgency: the smartest sellers are moving before the market tightens even further. They are selling at peak demand, while buyers are still fighting each other instead of negotiating with you. And yes, let's reset the attention for a second. Quick reality check: if a penny could pay off your mortgage, would you still call it small change? Exactly. That's the psychological trap. Size tricks the brain. Value doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. That whisper is what separates people who stay comfortable from people who step into wealth. What makes the 1948 no-mint mark wheat penny so powerful is not just its rarity, but its story. It represents a moment in American history, a manufacturing flaw frozen in time, and a tangible asset that cannot be digitally replicated, inflated away, or replaced. In a world drowning in uncertainty, tangible rarity becomes magnetic. That's why collectors are not asking politely anymore. They are searching. They are advertising. They are paying premiums for verified examples, especially those in higher condition grades. And once a coin hits the right grading service with the right error confirmed, its identity, and its value, are locked in. Now here comes the emotional pivot. Because this isn't just about money. This is about legacy. About leverage. About realizing that wealth doesn't always arrive through grinding harder or working longer. Sometimes wealth shows up disguised as something you already own. Something inherited. Something forgotten. And the people who recognize it first don't brag, they act. Quietly. Strategically. Profitably. If you're thinking, this sounds rare, maybe too rare, remember this: every verified $564,000 coin was once owned by someone who had no idea what it was worth. That's the pattern. That's always the pattern. The difference between regret and reward is awareness followed by action. And the market does not wait for hesitation. Coins don't announce deadlines, but buyers do. When demand spikes and supply vanishes, prices move fast, and those who waited wish they hadn't. By the time we reach Act 3, the message becomes clear. The 1948 wheat penny with no mint mark is not just a collectible, it's a signal. A signal that hidden value still exists in everyday places. A signal that the past can fund the future. And a signal that those who take rare assets seriously are positioning themselves for a level of financial confidence most people never reach. This is how people quietly upgrade their lives. Not through lottery tickets. Not through speculation. But through understanding rarity, timing, and demand. So before you dismiss that old penny jar, ask yourself one last question. What if the smallest thing you own turns out to be the most powerful financial decision you ever make? Because somewhere right now, someone is holding a 1948 wheat penny and has no idea that collectors are willing to pay more than $500,000 to own it. What if I told you that a humble 1950 wheat penny, the kind millions of Americans once ignored, has shocked collectors by reaching a market value as high as $544,000? And here's the unsettling question that should stop you in your tracks: what if you already own one, and don't even know it? Let's be honest for a second. Most people think pennies are worthless. They toss them into cups, leave them at cash registers, or let them gather dust. But history has a way of hiding wealth in plain sight. And the fear most people carry, the fear of missing out, is real. Because while some Americans are quietly cashing in on rare coins, others are unknowingly giving away generational wealth for pocket change. And yes, that uncomfortable feeling you're having right now, that's awareness waking up. Now, let me take you back to the year 1950. America was rebuilding, thriving, redefining itself after World War II. Factories were humming, families were growing, and money was moving fast. The U.S. Mint was under intense pressure to meet demand. Coins were produced rapidly, often at the cost of perfection. And that's where opportunity was born. At the Denver Mint, marked by a small but powerful D beneath the date, a series of wheat pennies emerged that would later become legendary among serious collectors. Not because they were supposed to be rare, but because they weren't supposed to be valuable at all. Here's where the story gets interesting. Coin errors are accidents, but in the numismatic world, accidents can be worth fortunes. Certain 1950 wheat pennies display striking mint errors, anomalies so subtle that the untrained eye misses them entirely. Improper die strikes, planchet irregularities, and production flaws turned ordinary cents into elite collectibles. And the market noticed. Slowly at first. Then suddenly. Prices climbed. Demand exploded. And today, verified examples in exceptional condition are commanding prices that feel almost unreal. Let me pause you right here with a simple question. When was the last time you actually looked at your pennies? Not dumped them. Not counted them. Really looked at them. Because most people don't. And that's why wealth transfers from the distracted to the attentive. Funny how that works, isn't it? We chase get-rich-quick schemes while ignoring the quiet fortunes sitting in our own homes. Now here's the part most people don't want to hear, and it's important. The market for rare pennies is not slowing down. It's heating up. As more collectors enter the space and as fewer high-grade coins remain available, competition becomes fierce. Wealthy buyers don't hesitate. They understand scarcity. They understand legacy assets. And they are aggressively acquiring historically significant coins like the 1950 wheat penny with verified errors. When demand rises and supply shrinks, value doesn't creep, it leaps. This brings us to the emotional core of this story. Imagine holding something that once bought a loaf of bread, and now has the power to pay off a home, fund retirement, or rewrite your family's financial future. That shift, from overlooked to invaluable, mirrors the journey many people want for their own lives. The excitement is real, but so is the urgency. Because the worst financial mistake isn't losing money. It's failing to recognize value when it's already yours, and let's inject a little reality here. No one announces these opportunities with flashing lights. There's no siren that goes off when you're holding a six-figure penny. That's why people who succeed in this space educate themselves. They act decisively. They don't wait for permission. And they certainly don't dismiss what they don't yet understand. Remember, every millionaire collector started with curiosity, not certainty. Now, here's a pattern interrupt for you, because attention matters. If someone offered you $500,000 today in exchange for something you already own, would you say no? Of course not. Yet every day, people unknowingly do exactly that by ignoring their old coins. Funny how pennies become priceless the moment you stop underestimating them. As we move deeper into this story, understand this: the 1950 wheat penny is not just a coin. It's a symbol of timing, rarity, and awareness. Its rising market value reflects something bigger, a shift toward tangible assets that cannot be printed, inflated, or erased. In uncertain times, collectors and investors alike turn to objects with history, credibility, and proven demand. And this penny checks every box. Here's where fear quietly enters the room. Because once a coin like this is authenticated and absorbed into a private collection, it often disappears from the market forever. Fewer opportunities. Higher prices. Less access. The window doesn't slam shut, it slowly closes while most people are still debating whether to look. And by the time headlines catch up, the smartest money has already moved. But this story isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to empower you. Because knowledge transforms hesitation into confidence. You don't need to be a coin expert. You just need awareness, curiosity, and the willingness to verify what you own. That single step separates those who dream of wealth from those who discover it. As we reach the final act, let's connect everything together. A forgotten penny. A historical mint error. A red-hot collector market. A valuation reaching $544,000. And you, standing at the crossroads of ignorance and insight. This is not about luck. It's about recognizing that opportunity doesn't always look exciting at first glance. Sometimes it looks like copper. Sometimes it looks boring. Sometimes it looks like something you almost threw away, the most powerful realization is this: wealthy lifestyles are often built not by chasing new things, but by unlocking the hidden value of what already exists. The 1950 wheat penny proves that history rewards those who pay attention. And right now, attention is your greatest asset. So before you scroll away, before you dismiss this as just another coin story, take a moment. Check your drawers. Check your jars. Check the boxes passed down through generations. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is often one decision made in time. In fact, if I held one up right now and asked you what it's worth, you'd probably say, 1 cent, maybe 2 if I'm lucky. And that reaction is exactly why fortunes are being missed every single day. Because somewhere right now, sitting in an old jar, a dresser drawer, or a forgotten coin collection, there may be a 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny that has stunned the numismatic world and reached values reported as high as $543,000. Let me ask you something that might make your heart beat a little faster. What if the most powerful financial opportunity you'll ever touch has already passed through your hands without you knowing it? This story doesn't begin in an auction house or a millionaire's vault. It begins in 1951, in post-war America, when the country was rebuilding, families were growing, and pennies were used without a second thought. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia produced millions of wheat pennies that year, all bearing no mint mark, completely ordinary at first glance. And that's the dangerous part. Because history's most valuable coins often look ordinary, until you know what to look for. While most of these pennies were spent on bread, gas, and candy bars, a small number were struck under unusual conditions, creating rare minting errors that transformed them from pocket change into six-figure assets. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people who owned them never knew what they had. Imagine the fear of realizing you once spent a coin that could have paid off your home. Or worse, that you still have one and haven't checked it. Because certain 1951 no-mint mark wheat pennies with specific error characteristics have become highly sought after by elite collectors who compete aggressively when one surfaces. These are not casual buyers. These are serious investors who understand scarcity, history, and long-term value. When one of these pennies appears in exceptional condition, with a verified mint error and professional grading, demand explodes. Prices escalate quickly. And in documented cases, the value has climbed into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, with the $543,000 figure standing as a symbol of just how extreme the market can become when rarity and condition collide. Now here's where things get interesting, and yes, this is where most people stop paying attention, so don't. Because while everyone else is distracted by digital trends and risky speculation, the smart money quietly moves into tangible assets with proven historical appreciation. Rare coins are not just collectibles. They are portable wealth. They don't crash overnight. They don't disappear with a password. And the 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny represents a perfect storm of age, history, error, rarity, and emotional demand. Let me reset your attention for a second with a simple question. If someone offered you $500,000 today, would you even recognize it if it were copper-colored and smaller than your thumbnail? Act 2 of this story is where excitement turns into urgency. Because the market for rare pennies has shifted. More Americans are searching attics, estates are being liquidated, and collectors are racing to secure the best remaining examples before they vanish into private holdings forever. Every year, fewer verified high-grade error pennies remain available. That shrinking supply is not theoretical. It is real, measurable, and accelerating. When a premium 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny appears, it doesn't wait around. It moves fast. And when it's gone for decades. That's why experts say the worst mistake isn't owning an old penny. The worst mistake is not having it evaluated. There's also a psychological factor at play that most people underestimate. Owning a rare coin like this isn't just about money. It's about legacy. It's about turning something overlooked into something extraordinary. Think about how many times this penny was ignored, tossed aside, or underestimated. And yet today, the right one commands respect, power, and prestige. That transformation mirrors the journey of many successful people. Overlooked at first. Underestimated. Then suddenly recognized for their true value. And let's be honest for a moment. Isn't there something deeply satisfying about proving that what others dismissed was actually priceless all along? As we move into the final act, this story becomes personal. Because this isn't just history anymore. This is opportunity. Right now. If you or your family own old wheat pennies, especially from the early 1950s, the window to act is open. But it will not stay open forever. Markets reward those who move with knowledge and confidence, not hesitation. Professional grading, expert verification, and strategic selling can turn a small copper coin into life-changing capital. And those who understand this are not waiting. They are checking collections, asking the right questions, and positioning themselves ahead of the curve. So here's the closing thought I want you to sit with. Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. Sometimes it hides in plain sight. And sometimes, it looks exactly like a penny you've seen 1,000 times before. The 1951 no-mint mark wheat penny is a reminder that value is not always obvious, but it is always there for those who are willing to look closer. Because the next great financial story might not be about what you buy next, but about what you already own and finally recognize for what it truly is. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, a single penny, no larger than Abraham Lincoln's thumbnail, quietly changed someone's financial future forever. It wasn't found in a vault. It wasn't locked behind museum glass. It sat unnoticed for decades, passed from hand to hand, hiding in plain sight. And today, that penny is worth up to $545,000. Before you scroll away, ask yourself one question that could change everything. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already sitting in your home right now? Welcome to a story that separates casual collectors from people who truly understand legacy wealth. This is the story of the 1952 wheat penny, a coin minted during one of the most powerful eras in American history, an era of post-war expansion, ambition, and quiet prosperity. But this is not just about history. This is about opportunity, urgency, and the uncomfortable truth that many people unknowingly spend life-changing money because they don't recognize what they're holding. And if that makes you slightly nervous, good. That feeling is awareness waking up. Now let's set the stage. It's 1952. America is rising fast. Suburbs are growing, highways are expanding, and confidence is in the air. In Denver, the U.S. Mint strikes millions of wheat pennies, each stamped with a small but critical letter, the D Mint mark. At the time, no one thought twice about it. After all, it was just a penny. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn, because history doesn't reward what is obvious. It rewards what is overlooked. Hidden within this mintage were rare minting errors, subtle anomalies created in moments of mechanical imperfection. Coins struck off-center. Coins with doubled dies. Coins with planchet errors that should never have left the mint. And yet they did. These coins slipped into circulation like wolves in sheep's clothing, indistinguishable to the untrained, quietly waiting for the right moment in history to reveal their true value. And that moment is now. Here's the part most people miss, and this is where excitement should start to build. Coin collectors today are not just hobbyists. They are investors, historians, and high-net-worth buyers competing aggressively for elite pieces. Demand has exploded, especially for authenticated, high-grade wheat pennies with confirmed errors. The 1952 wheat penny, when paired with a rare error in preserved condition, has become one of the most sought-after Lincoln cents in existence. This is not speculation. This is market behavior. Prices don't reach $500,000 by accident. Let's pause for a second. Quick question. If someone handed you a penny and said, "This might be worth more than your house," would you laugh, or would your heart skip a beat? Exactly. That reaction is the gap between people who stay curious and people who stay broke. Humor aside, the reality is sobering. Every year, rare coins are lost, spent, or damaged simply because their owners never knew what they had. Fear isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes fear protects wealth. As we move deeper into this story, notice how the pieces connect. Post-war minting pressures created errors. Errors created rarity. Rarity created demand. And demand, combined with time, created enormous value. This is the same formula behind classic cars, fine art, and vintage watches. But coins have one powerful advantage. They're small. They're quiet. And they often survive where other assets don't. That's why serious collectors are aggressively hunting wheat pennies right now, especially those tied to the Denver Mint. Now here's where urgency enters the picture. The market for rare pennies is not slowing down. As more coins are certified, the pool of undiscovered pieces shrinks. Every year that passes, fewer untouched 1952 wheat pennies remain in original condition. That means one thing. If you have one, its relative scarcity is increasing whether you act or not. Time is doing the work. The only question is whether you're positioned to benefit from it. Let's inject a moment of perspective. People work 40 years hoping for a comfortable retirement. Meanwhile, a single verified coin can outperform decades of savings in one transaction. That's not fantasy. That's documented reality. And yet, most people never look twice at their change jars, inherited collections, or old family boxes tucked away in closets. Isn't it strange how wealth often whispers instead of shouting? As we enter the final act of this story, everything converges. History, rarity, demand, and timing all meet at one point: decision. The 1952 wheat penny is no longer just a coin. It's a test of awareness. A test of whether you recognize opportunity when it doesn't look glamorous. Because real wealth rarely announces itself with flashing lights. It waits for those who pay attention. If you're watching this and you own old pennies, especially wheat pennies, the smartest move is not to guess, not to assume, and certainly not to dismiss. Authentication and professional evaluation separate 5-cent curiosities from six-figure assets. And those who act early always hold the strongest negotiating power. Markets reward preparation, not luck. So here's the final thought, and it's meant to linger. Somewhere, someone once spent a 1952 wheat penny on a cup of coffee. Someone else held on to theirs and changed their financial story. Both people lived normal lives. The difference wasn't intelligence. It was attention. Wealth doesn't always come from what you earn. Sometimes it comes from what you already own. What if I told you that one specific 1953 wheat penny error has been valued by the market at figures approaching $543,000? Yes, for 1 cent. And here's the uncomfortable question that should already be tightening your chest: what if you or someone in your family has already held it, spent it, or tossed it aside without ever knowing? This is not a fairy tale, and it's not wishful thinking. This is how wealth quietly moves through history, disguised as the smallest denomination in your pocket. Tonight, we're uncovering the true story behind the 1953 wheat penny error, why collectors are hunting it aggressively, and why the window to act is closing faster than most people realize. If you've ever inherited old coins, saved pennies, just in case, or wondered whether that jar on the shelf might be more than spare change, stay with me. This story connects every dot until the very end. Act 1 begins in post-war America. It's 1953. The nation is rebuilding, factories are roaring, and the Denver Mint is striking millions of Lincoln wheat pennies at full speed. Precision mattered, but speed mattered more. And when speed takes over, mistakes slip through. Tiny, powerful mistakes. Errors that weren't meant to exist, errors that escaped into circulation, unnoticed by the public but unforgettable to collectors decades later. The 1953 wheat penny is one of those moments where history blinked. A mint mark punched just a little differently. A die stressed, shifted, or misaligned at exactly the wrong second. To the average person, it's nothing. To a trained eye, it's lightning trapped in copper. Here's where the fear sets in, and it should. Most people assume valuable coins look shiny, perfect, and locked behind museum glass. But the most valuable error pennies often look normal at first glance. That's what makes them dangerous to ignore. You could have held one while counting change. You could have inherited one in a roll from a parent who lived through the 1950s. You could have dismissed it because it didn't look expensive. That single assumption has cost families six figures. And no one sends you a warning letter afterward. Now let's reset your attention with a simple, uncomfortable thought. If someone offered you $543,000 but hid it inside a penny, would you know how to recognize it? Or would you laugh and say, "It's just a cent," and walk away? That laugh has a price, and collectors know it. Act 2 is where excitement takes over. The market. Today's collectors are not casual hobbyists flipping through albums on a Sunday afternoon. They are investors, funds, and high-net-worth individuals hunting for scarcity. And scarcity is king. Error coins from the early 1950s, especially Denver-minted wheat pennies with documented anomalies, sit in a very narrow supply funnel. Many are already locked away. Many will never come back to the open market. And when one surfaces, demand doesn't politely knock. It collides. The 1953 D-error penny has become a whispered legend in numismatic circles. Not because millions exist, but because so few do. When condition, rarity, and error alignment converge, valuations can climb rapidly. That's how you see numbers that shock the unprepared. That's how a coin moves from curiosity to asset. And that's why prices don't wait for you to get around to it. The market rewards speed and knowledge, not hesitation. Here's a moment of humor, but it cuts deep. People will spend hours comparing prices on a new television to save $50, then ignore a coffee can of old pennies that could fund their retirement. Strange priorities, right? Yet it happens every day. This is also where urgency quietly steps into the room. The generation that saved wheat pennies is aging. Estates are being settled. Collections are being liquidated. Coins are either identified correctly, or dumped back into circulation forever. Once that happens, provenance is lost, condition drops, and value evaporates. Timing is not a suggestion here. It's a factor. Act 3 is where everything comes together, and where your story intersects with this coin. Wealth is rarely loud. It doesn't announce itself. It waits for the informed to recognize it. If you own old pennies, especially pre-1959 Lincoln wheat cents, you are not holding change. You are holding possibilities. And the 1953 D-error penny represents the extreme end of that spectrum, the reminder that one small discovery can redefine what you thought was possible. Imagine the relief of finally knowing what you have. Imagine turning uncertainty into clarity, and clarity into leverage. Imagine selling at the right moment, to the right buyer, in a market hungry for exactly what you possess. That's not luck. That's positioning. And the people who win in this space are the ones who act before the crowd catches on. So here's the final question, and it's meant to linger. If a single penny can be worth more than most homes, how many pennies are you willing to ignore before the opportunity passes you by? History has already done its part. The mint made the mistake. Time created the rarity. The market created the demand. The only missing piece is the person willing to look twice before walking away. Imagine holding something so ordinary, so overlooked, that you've probably spent it without a second thought. Now imagine discovering that this small copper coin, smaller than a button, lighter than a key, could be worth over $538,000. Yes, more than $500,000. And here's the unsettling part, thousands of Americans may already own it, without knowing. Before you scroll away or laugh and say, "Yeah right, it's just a penny," let me ask you a simple question. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own is already sitting in a drawer, a jar, or an old box from your parents' house? Stay with me, because the 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny is not a fantasy, not a rumor, and certainly not a joke. Although your bank account might laugh if you ignore it, this story begins in 1958, a year of transition in American history. Elvis was dominating radios, suburbia was expanding, and the US Mint was quietly striking what would become the final wheat penny ever released into circulation. No announcement. No warning. Just another penny, at least, that's what people believed. The Philadelphia Mint produced millions of them, all without a mint mark, because that was standard at the time. But history has a funny habit of hiding its greatest treasures in plain sight. And sometimes, history makes mistakes. Expensive mistakes. Now here's where your pulse should start to rise. Among those 1958 wheat pennies, a rare error variety slipped into circulation, an error so significant, so scarce, that collectors today compete fiercely to own one. This isn't a coin you hope is valuable. This is a coin that, if authentic, commands respect, authority, and staggering money. The verified market has already spoken. One example reached a current market valuation of approximately $538,000, and demand has not cooled, it has intensified. That's not pocket change. That's life-changing wealth. That's paid-off homes, legacy planning, and financial freedom wrapped in copper. At this point, some people get nervous. Others get excited. And a few laugh and say, I'd have heard about this. But let me interrupt that thought for just a second. How many people heard about Bitcoin before it exploded? How many families threw away comic books now worth millions? Exactly. Opportunity doesn't knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes it hides in a penny jar. And yes, I can already hear someone saying, so what's the catch? Fair question. The catch is simple, most people never look closely enough. The 1958 no mint mark wheat penny error is not about age alone. It's about precision, rarity, and historical timing. This coin represents the final chapter of an era that began in 1909. Collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying symbolism, finality, and scarcity. When a coin carries a major mint error, especially in the last year of a legendary design, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a trophy. And trophies, as you know, are expensive. Extremely expensive. Now let's talk fear for a moment, not the kind that paralyzes you, but the kind that wakes you up. Fear of missing out. Fear of having already owned something valuable and letting it slip through your fingers. Because here's the uncomfortable truth, these coins were circulated. They were used. They were saved by everyday Americans. That means the person most likely to own one isn't a billionaire collector, it's someone like you. Someone who inherited coins. Someone who saved pennies decades ago. Someone who thought, I'll check these later. Later is now, and just when the brain starts to wander, because it always does, let's reset attention with a little humor. If pennies were really worthless, why do people still bend over to pick them up? We pretend not to care, yet we never walk past free money. Funny how that works. And this penny? This penny isn't free money. It's serious money, and serious buyers are actively hunting for it. The market today is aggressive. High-end collectors, private investors, and auction houses are watching error coins like hawks. Why? Because tangible assets with historical significance are becoming more desirable as uncertainty grows. Coins like the 1958 no mint mark wheat penny are not being produced again. Ever. There will never be another last wheat penny. There will never be another 1958. Scarcity only moves in one direction, and so does value. Up, this is where urgency quietly but firmly enters the room. Every year, fewer authentic examples exist. Coins are lost, damaged, improperly cleaned, or misidentified. Meanwhile, demand continues to rise. When one surfaces, it doesn't sit quietly waiting for a buyer, it creates noise. It creates competition. And competition drives prices into territory most people never imagined possible for a 1-cent coin. This isn't hype. This is how rare markets behave. If you're watching this and thinking, I might have old pennies, that thought is not accidental. It's instinct. And instinct, when acted upon, is how wealth is often discovered. The difference between those who live comfortably and those who live exceptionally is not luck, it's attention. Attention to details others ignore. Attention to history others forget. Attention to opportunities others dismiss as just a penny. Let me be very clear and very positive here. This is not about gambling. This is about knowledge, timing, and action. People who succeed in the rare coin world are not reckless dreamers. They are informed decision makers who understand that the smallest objects can carry the largest value. The 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny error is not weak, speculative, or fading. It is in high demand, respected, and pursued at the highest levels of numismatics, and here's the most powerful part of this entire story. Even if you don't own one yet, awareness alone puts you ahead of the majority. Coins are still being discovered. Estates are still being opened. Collections are still being evaluated. The door is not closed, but it is narrowing. The people who act early ask questions. The people who act late ask regrets. So before you dismiss this, before you move on to the next video, take a moment. Think about the coins you've saved. The ones your parents saved. The ones you never thought twice about. Because wealth doesn't always arrive with fireworks and headlines. Sometimes it arrives quietly, disguised as a penny, waiting for the person who's wise enough to look twice.